Okay, open to questions. I've got Paul and then Mark.
Hi there. Thanks, Thor. That's fascinating to look at because it is such a commonplace issue that arises in consensus. I wonder how the system handles interdependencies, because these things are not separate from one another. And if you change one piece, then it can change everything else. So how are you thinking about that?
Well, kind of what I showed there with the parent, child, grandchild, there's kind of interdependencies within that particular topic. Now, if there is another related topic, policy, bill, whatever, that there is a relationship between. In the process of discussing topic number A or bill number A, we will identify that this other bill or policy or element has a relationship with it and impacts how this first one works. So our process there is that we actually explicitly define and document what that relationship is, and potentially the first one can't be resolved until that second one's been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
So this also addresses another issue. You get people talking about things, and before you know it, you're 50 topics down the road in the conversation, and nothing has been clearly agreed to. With this particular structure, it sort of channels and guides you into resolving that element that you've got under discussion and stops the herd of cats from spreading everywhere.
Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Thor. It's lovely to find people with passion wanting to share their ways of going. As you told me the story about how we deal with people contesting ideas and holding it all together in one framework that everybody could work with, I just reflected about how is my experience of how, because essentially what we're looking for is people with a worldview or a mindset or an answer to how we should proceed. How can, when we get together collectively, what's the conditions that create any of us to change our mind? And I think in our current political context, anyone who changes their mind in a public space just gets pilloried. So it's not a safe place, even in our academic circles, for anybody to change their mind. Whereas really the wisdom comes out of, I think, a safe place where collectively people with strongly held positions can be safe enough and not lose face when they change their mind. And I think the conditions for that aren't necessarily the powerful technology that you're sharing with us. It's a way of collectively being together. I mean, Paul Atkins would call it pro-social environments, where we actually create conditions for people to bring their best of being together collectively and individually. And I think we can create those conditions, and we can have technologies that help it, but we need to understand the psychology of how people create fear and contraction when we're not allowed to change our minds. So we could have a very complex system with people with inability to change their minds. We just get more mess. So I wonder what the technology would be to create safety for minds to change. I've got some ideas about it, but that's what comes up for me.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not a technological solution. That is a human solution, the way we interact together in groups and how we respect each other and who we deem as the person who's got more knowledge on that sort of thing. And we defer to those people. When you initially started speaking, it was raising another aspect of it, which is related to this. And that is, for example, you wouldn't want a highly qualified person such as an airline pilot performing brain surgery. And conversely, you wouldn't want a highly qualified brain surgeon performing the job of an airline pilot. So when it comes down to who makes decisions about things, you need people who are sufficiently informed to be able to make that decision. And this is a criticism of democracy. It's mob rule. We don't want people just to be able to go, yeah, I think it should be this, and I know nothing about it, but my vote should count just as much as the person who's an expert. We see that in the anti-vaxxer, sovereign citizen thing and what's going on with COVID and that kind of thing at the moment. So the element that we use in VoteRap to address that is when the consensus group starts out on discussing something, they will make an initial determination using this very process to determine whether there should be barriers to entry with regards to actually having a vote on this thing. Now, if you're going to do something on brain surgery procedures, then your peers in that consensus group will decide, well, okay, you need to be a brain surgeon, or you need to have been somebody who worked in the theatre with a brain surgeon, or you've been doing surgery policy research for the last 20 years, or something like that. So that then allows the people who are actually going to make those decisions to be making sufficiently informed decisions. And within our model, it then allows proxies of people who aren't brain surgeons and don't really have standing at that table to be able to give their proxy to somebody who has met that threshold test for that expert consensus group. And so I think that's a blend of best of those. So that some way goes to answer your question, Mark. And I'm interested to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, no, I think there's a role for experts, but experts can be helping decision makers be informed. If we allowed the, the uninformed or the unwashed, so people who are just citizens, with good process skills to create safety and psychological flexibility, and had wise input on specialist skills. So we're separating the decision-making from the experts to the community with good social processes. And the experts inform the unwashed on what they, so the unwashed, if that's a bad term, but just the average citizen who mightn't see themselves as an expert, if they're given skillful ways to ask questions of experts and they're allowed to keep their agency, then I think what you're saying and what I'm saying could fit together quite well.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind, that's only for those particular areas, domains where there needs to be a sufficient level of understanding what's in there. Now, I'll take another example at the other end. I mean, I actually started out this process over 20 years ago by thinking, if I'm successful, I'll probably be dead because I'm going to threaten so many rich and powerful vested interests, they'll probably kill me. So kind of on the Fox Mulder X-Files model, I thought if I can get enough people involved in this idea, then they can't take us all out. Now, the one idea I was going to use as a stalking horse was an improved national anthem. Now, I've gone through that. I've got an improved national anthem. But that type of thing to vote on, you don't need to be an expert. You know, if you're an Australian citizen, everyone should be able to vote on it and have their say. So I see that as kind of being at the other end of the spectrum of needing informed input.
Plaxi, then Rob.
Thanks, Thor, and apologies if you answered this question already. Can you clarify how the people who use the tool and vote within the tool come to be there? So are the people who are going to be mostly affected by a decision involved in making the decision, regardless of whether they are the great unwashed or the minority unwashed or not?
They enter the system by registering themselves as a voter in the electorate of Dixon. And that's our outreach process. I'm about to combine that with my nomination. I've got to get 100 people to nominate me in the electorate to stand as an independent candidate. I've done this twice before, so I've got a list of people. I'm going to go back to them. But this time I'm going to be wanting them to register as a voter with the Dixon Reps. Once they're registered, they can then choose to be an uninformed voter, which is they give their proxy to a community rep and they don't care how the community rep uses that particular proxy. They can check the box and say, I wish to be an informed voter. So if the community rep votes on a bill using that particular proxy, they get informed and they can either agree with it or make another decision. They could be the next level up, which is self-representing. So you look at all those bills, you vote yourself, you can look at all of them, you can vote on everything. You have your own agency. You can then choose to become a bill representative as well as being a community representative or self-representing, because a bill representative says, I've got a special interest in this particular bill area and I want to get involved. I want to be involved in the debates. I want to share my position. I want to have the political fight with those people who oppose it, etc. The next level in our hierarchy is somebody who wishes to be a candidate. That person will usually have been a bill or a community representative, and they will then go out and get their 100 nominations to stand as an independent candidate. And in our model, we're looking for multiple independent candidates. We don't want just one. So at the moment, we've got 44 locations where they have polling booths in Dixon. And ideally, it's not going to happen this election, that's for sure. If I can get one or more two independents to stand alongside with me on the Dixon Reps network, that'd be great. We then have a contest in effect. So if you had 44 independent candidates, they've got a constituency of about 3,000 people in each one of their locations. So they do their work in those locations, they get the support, and they've signed the stat deck, actually declaring that they will represent what the majority want if elected. And anyone who's signed the stat deck, we preference them. So if potentially we could have 44 independent candidates all preferencing each other. Now, if one candidate gets 0.8%, another one gets 1.2%, another one gets 0.4%, whoever gets the most percentage out of our network of independent candidates will eventually harvest, as like Glenn Drury, the preference whisperer, did in the Senate. They will get all the votes from the independent Dixon Reps network, and they get elected.
Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to, this is predicated on a high level of participation by voters from among the 110,000 voters. What happens if not many people are wanting to get involved or to give their proxy vote to somebody else, and that the group that is there is fairly unrepresentative?
Well, then it'd be a failure.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I'm only focusing on Dixon. If I can't make it work in Dixon, I may as well pack my tent up and go home, or figure out some better way to do it. I mean, as I say to many people, you come up with a better idea, I'll ditch mine and go with yours. But what I've got at the moment has been 20 or more years in the making. I've had lots of people come along and say, hey, what about this and that bit there? And what you're seeing at the moment, what I'm talking about, incorporates a lot of input from a lot of people over the years. But from my experience of knocking on doors, and I'm about to find this out in the next couple of weeks because I'm about to recommence my door knocking. When I say, well, I'm seeking your nomination, and to do that, I wish to register you as a voter in Dixon. And in that form, that's where you check the tick box, where you actually select me and from a drop-down list as an independent candidate. So if I meet a whole heap of resistance at that point, then I'll know I've got a problem. Now, I did experience this earlier because after the 2013 election, I was going to form the Australian Representatives as a national political party. And I did all the legwork at the background. And then I started out going out through my network to sign people up to join the party. And the resistance was immense. They went, that's a great idea. We really like it. We're glad you're doing it. But I don't really want to join a political party. And it sort of died at that point. And that's where I moved on to go, well, political party per se, it actually creates a problem in itself because you're asking people to become tribal. And if people have been tribal, as in blue team, red team, green team, orange team, whatever, for most of their voting life, and you're asking to join a new team, it's a higher bar. It's a more difficult ask than just saying, we believe that we need a mechanism for you to be able to communicate your vote to the elected member. We offer that mechanism, and we'd like to offer it to you, and this is what it is.
I'm getting the image of a sausage machine that goes from the people through to the representative. And I haven't got this clearly worked out in my mind, but I'm thinking there are stages in there, and that at each stage you need a different mechanism to make the whole sausage machine work. So it's not one neat machine that does it all. It's a series of machines, the output of one machine being the input to the next machine.
Well,
And-
kind of the sausage stays on the conveyor belt.
Yeah,
It just goes through different processes.
Yeah. All right, that's a good analogy. I'll go with that. And so in this conversation, the point of the analogy is that in this conversation, we're ranging up and down the conveyor belt, which I think is great discussion. And I don't think we have to get more specific at this stage. But in the future, I think it's going to be useful to start to think about what are the different bits in the conveyor belt. So I'll just leave that and go to Mark.
Yeah, what I heard in Plaxty's question, Thor, was what's the easy way for the 110,000 people in each electorate to enter into an interchange with other people that's respectful and helpful and resolves things and motivates people? And it's basically a web-based platform. So how do we make sure that filter doesn't just cut a whole lot of people out because they're either not literate with it, they're not comfortable with it, or
no,
they
you're
like
absolutely correct. And
hang on, let me just say.
Sorry.
All I was going to say was the only place in the world that I've seen, and I'm not saying I'm an expert on it, and you've done a lot of work on it too, and you may already know about this, but Audrey Tang in Taiwan, I think the story there of how the Taiwanese people have engaged using internet-based technology to get collective wise engagement, I'd say there's just some learnings to go to there if you wanted to.
How do you spell
explore.
that last name?
Audrey Tang,
T-A-N-G.
T-A-N-G, in Taiwan.
And do they sort of have some organisation name they go by? Or?
If you did some
Audrey
Google search
Tang,
just
Taiwan.
for
Yep, no, good. Thank you.
Taiwanese democracy. Yeah.
Definitely go and have a look at that.
Great, thank you, Mark. Rob, are you waving?
No, well, I wasn't. I was just playing with a beard. But I think we need to do a time check because we're kind of
coming up to 27 past.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take that notice. I'll go to Plaxi and then we'll do a time check.
So I don't think I actually answered your question.
I've got another one. You can do it quickly, maybe you can answer them both.
Yep.
I'm curious how you would, if there's a spectrum from adversarial debate at one end to collaborative dialogue at the other end. I imagine that every system encourages conversation that's going to be generally on average somewhere along the spectrum. Where would you put the type of conversation that you think this process will generate?
Well, I think that when you have people sitting down together in the real world, breathing the same air, the disrespect tends to diminish. If you're like, give an example, road rage, you're in a car, you're protected, nobody else can sort of really hear what you're saying or get to you. Now, I'm sure all of us have said things in our car to other car drivers that we would not say as a pedestrian when we're walking down the street past them. So I think by people actually sharing the same space, all the evolution of us as human beings and how we work things out in a civil manner as a group is inherent within us. Now, if somebody becomes too adversarial, I find that just being able to vote yes or no on something actually allows people to vote not for valid reasons on that particular topic. So the deliberative part of the process actually opens up. Someone says, no, I don't like that idea. Well, the group says, why don't you like that idea? Can you explain it to us? Now, in my experience, if that person just is no, because they don't like it, or they like it for a reason that's not actually related to the topic, then they tend to kind of go, you know, and they can't really address it. And it's really fascinating to watch the dynamic because that person kind of steps away and the group kind of discounts their need to be involved. So I think that we don't need to actually create a lot of those mechanisms. They're actually there. We just need to take them out of the hierarchical structure of a group who, through the form of a committee or some higher group, actually just takes what they think, or what the group crudely says in a rough vote, yes or no. If you actually, at the risk of talking too long, I had this experience. I formed the snowboarding organisation. I was a pioneer and founder. I got the mountains opened up in Victoria. We had the Mount Hotham Board Riders, which I was the president of at the time. And when the money poured into the sport, the decisions that we were making, which used to work, stopped working. And we actually went back to a deliberative model. Now we've got 100 people, only 30 people are interested in this particular topic. So we'd catch up at the pub, talk about it. And if somebody disagreed, we would interrogate them. They couldn't just vote yes or no, because they don't want it to happen because they wanted to start up a snowboard instruction business or a hire business or tours or something like that. And they were trying to keep their commercial interests protected.
Rob, thank you. Rob, time check.
Sorry, don't know if that answered your question fully, Plaxi.
Well, I think
Hang on,
for an hour and a half. Sorry,
Rob. Plaxi, yeah.
Were you addressing me?
Now I'm addressing you. Your time check.
Yes. Well, I was just thinking that it's getting to an hour and a half, and that's a sort of quite a long time for a Zoom discussion. So I'm wondering whether I'm sort of ready to wind up personally, but it's a question of what other people
Would you like to put a proposal to the group?
Yeah, I'm conscious that we haven't really addressed Bob's request for a further discussion on sortition, and which I think is a really important one. But I also think that we've talked for a long time.
Would you like to put a proposal to the group?
Oh well, I personally am ready to wind up the discussion, but it's a question of what and I can just leave as an individual, but it's a question of what other people want to do.
I agree.
Good.
I think an hour and a half is sufficient, and we should wind up. As does you.
Okay.
Well, I'm happy to stay on and talk to anybody that still may wish to interrogate me any further.
The only problem is once I turn the recording off, that's if I go away, that's not going to be. So I do need to know.
Go and have a coffee.
Yeah.
Propose something, please.
Yes. Oh.
Proposal.
Yep.
My proposal is that we finish up now, but I've been jotting some notes down here, working a little bit more on this idea, or the idea of the conveyor belt, the different bits in the conveyor belt and the different mechanisms that might make that happen. So if our conveyor belt is about creating a people with the people democracy, and it's got various components in it, such as securing responsiveness from your MP, sourcing information, making sure the representative continues to listen to your views afterwards, after the vote. Those are the sort of parts of the process. And then a separate part where I would perhaps put different mechanisms that might allow those components to happen. I'm just proposing that I could put that together as a draft thing for everybody to contribute to and rejiggle around, and that it might initiate some more conversation.
And like for tomorrow's session at some stage.
A valuable idea, Petra. Yeah. So, and it would. Well, we've got a couple of choices here. Gilles, you're waving.
Well, very quickly, tomorrow afternoon, we'll have an opportunity to discuss this a bit more too, including sortition.
Yes.
That's all.
Is anybody putting a lethal objection forward to winding up today's proceedings now and reconvening at 9 o'clock in the morning?
That's good.
All right.
And just in the spirit of the exercise, if I was to express a lethal objection, would you guys all stay here? I suggest probably not.
I wouldn't know.
Well, there you go. You go. You've got extra power,
I do.
just like one of those elected representatives.
No, I'm not.
Unelected.
No, I said like.
Yeah,
It's got to come to an end at some stage.
that's right. So
I just say I value your energy, Thor, and really appreciate the passion you've got in this. But I'll be heading off now too.
Yeah, look, I've got things to do as well. To tell you the truth, I'd rather be surfing or snowboarding or building a house or walking through the forest. You know, I don't want to be doing this. I want to live in a well-governed country. And if we had a well-governed country, I could just go and get on and do all the things I want to do.
I agree. Okay, Petra, can I just talk to you about your proposal and what we're going to do with it? Anybody who wants to listen, feel free to stay around. Otherwise, I'm quite happy for you to leave and catch you up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you very much for coming.
All right.
Catch you
Thanks,
Great to hear you
everyone.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.